Japanese man dressed in brightly colored pajamas wakes up in a completely white, empty room. There are no doors, windows, or even a visible ceiling. When he walks up to one of the walls to take a closer look, he spots something strange protruding from it, an object shaped like a small male organ. Curious, he pokes it a few times and finally presses the tip. Instantly, hundreds of tiny, laughing baby angels burst out of the floor and walls, surrounding him for a few seconds before vanishing again. The only thing they leave behind are more of those strange protrusions sticking out of every surface. This marks the beginning of what the story calls the learning phase. Horrified, the man sniffs the finger he used to press the object and screams in fear. He begins yelling for help, but no one answers. With no other choice, he starts pressing the other buttons scattered around the room. Every time he does, a completely random object appears, anything from a toothbrush to a large vase. He discovers that pressing the same button twice produces the same object again, which he tests by building up a mountain of chopsticks from one particular button. His amusement doesn't last long though. When he presses another button beside it, a small toy cart shoots out and smashes into his legs. Crying in pain, he hits the next button, and this one turns into a giant butt that farts in his face. The room is filled with random junk. When he throws a ball at the wall, it accidentally hits a button that produces sushi. Excited by the food, he sits down to eat but quickly realizes there's no soy sauce. He begs his unseen captors for some, but as usual, there's no response. So, he angrily keeps pressing the sushi button until he has a pile of food in front of him, but still no sauce. Giving up, he eats the sushi anyway, finding it delicious. Ironically, just as he finishes the last piece, he presses the button again, and now a bottle of soy sauce appears. Furious, he throws it aside. He tries a new button and gets a pair of old-fashioned 3D glasses. When he puts them on, he can see one of the baby angels pointing directly at his private parts, making him think he's discovered the solution. But pressing that button only triggers a countdown and causes a massive butt to descend from the ceiling and fart on him again. After several hours, he has managed to read 5 volumes of a manga he found among the items. When he presses a button to summon the 6th, it skips to volume 7. Frustrated, he presses others. They produce volumes 8 and 9, but never 6. Then, by pure luck, one button opens a hidden panel in the wall, revealing a door behind it. Overjoyed, he celebrates, but in his excitement, he forgets which button opened it. He frantically presses others. One summons an African tribesman who runs from wall to wall, another sprays water onto his head. Finally, he finds the right one again. The wall opens, and he sprints toward the exit, only for the door to slam shut on his face. The same thing happens again on his next attempt. He realizes the door stays open only while the button's tip is held down. So, he experiments with ways to keep it pressed, using his foot, a fly swatter, a jump rope, even a fan to blow air at it, but nothing works. He tries riding the toy cart into position, but it's too unpredictable. Eventually, he gets an idea. He can use the heavy vase to hold the button down. But even that doesn't work, the button pushes back up. He concludes he must make the vase heavier, so he tries filling it with water. Unfortunately, no matter how he redirects the water stream, it always splashes onto him. He then fills it with sushi, but it becomes too heavy to lift. The vase's neck is too narrow to reach inside, forcing him to use chopsticks to remove pieces one by one. After lightening the load, he can barely carry it again. But when he sets it down to recheck which button opens the door, the tribesman appears from another button, bumps into the vase, and breaks it in half. That's the last straw. Furious and desperate, the man screams uncontrollably, then tries covering the button with sushi. It doesn't work. He tapes it down, also useless. He even adds a steel plate, but the button still pops up. Exhausted, he takes painkillers for the bruises from being repeatedly hit by the closing door, then naps. When he wakes, he wants to brush his teeth and presses what he thinks is the water button, but instead, a long rope drops from the ceiling. That gives him a new idea. He'll swing across the room using the rope to reach the door before it closes. He tries, and makes it, but finds the door behind the wall locked. He barely escapes before it shuts again, getting hit on his way out. Kicking the wall in frustration, he accidentally activates another button, and this time, a key floats in the air. However, like the door, the key vanishes when the button resets. Now, he must find a way to keep both the door and the key active at once. First, though, he has to relocate the right button. After a few wrong guesses, one releases barking dogs, he finally finds the correct one. He marks it with a piece of sushi to remember. Using the rope and the plunger from earlier, he invents a new system: swing on the rope, use the plunger to push himself from the wall, and time it perfectly to hit the button, grab the key, press the door button, and reach the door. After a few failed tries, the plan works flawlessly. He turns the key in the lock, but the door still won't open. There's another lock above it that requires a 3-digit code. Panicking, he runs back before the door closes. In anger, he throws the plunger at the wall, activating the tribesman button again, and then he notices 3 numbers painted on the man's forehead. That must be the code. He repeats the whole process, swinging, jumping, and rushing, 3 times to enter each digit. On the 3rd try, he manages to turn the lock and push the door open, but before he can step through, the wall behind him closes in, trapping him between it and the door. Defeated, he sits on the floor, reflecting on how he once complained about the room but at least had space to move and things to do. Now he realizes he never appreciated what he had. Then, a faint breeze brushes his face. He touches the wall beside him and feels a crack. It's a fake panel. He shoves it open and dashes through, finding himself in a strange, floating hallway surrounded by darkness. He runs endlessly, and when he finally reaches the next room, his hair is long and his pajamas have faded. This new room also has no exits, but instead of baby angels, adult angels appear. When they vanish, they too leave behind the same peculiar wall buttons. This stage is called the practice phase. Meanwhile, in Mexico, a young boy named Antonio lives with his family. His father is a professional wrestler known as Escargot Man, who has lately grown unusually quiet. His wife assumes it's because his next opponent is much younger, but his father-in-law insists that experience matters more than youth. Escargot Man's daughter, Sister Karen, drives him to the arena, where he changes and prays to the Virgin Mary before his match. Antonio is teased at school for betting on his dad, whom the kids mock as weak and washed up. When the match begins, Antonio and his grandfather sit in the audience. The rival team, the Northern Tough Ones, consists of Super Demon and Tequila Joe. Escargot Man and his partner Silver Eagle enter under the name Kiss Me a Lot. Silver Eagle fights first and performs well until both opponents team up against him. They taunt Escargot Man to join in, but he hesitates until Silver Eagle tricks the rivals into hitting each other. When Escargot Man finally steps in, he too is quickly beaten. Just as one opponent raises a chair to strike him, the man in the mysterious room presses a button, and suddenly, Escargot Man's neck stretches magically, knocking out both enemies with his head. The man in the room notices nothing unusual, so he keeps pressing the button, making Escargot Man accidentally knock out his partner, the referee, Antonio, and even the bell. Frustrated, he tries different buttons. One causes a metal band singer in Los Angeles to breathe fire, another ruins a Russian magician's trick, and a third makes a man in China bark at his dogs. He's about to give up when he notices light coming from above. Unlike before, there's no ceiling, only a vast sky filled with flying angels. Inspired, he decides to climb upward using the wall buttons as handholds. Each time he presses one with his hands or feet, something extraordinary happens somewhere on Earth. Flowers bloom, animals die, natural and human events unfold, from simple inventions to monumental moments like humanity landing on the moon. As he ascends, his hair and beard grow long. Eventually, he no longer needs to cling to the wall, he can float like the angels. Having mastered the earlier stages, he now embraces his divine purpose. He begins pressing buttons deliberately, recreating humanity's greatest achievements rather than triggering random effects. Finally, the walls around him dissolve into a swirl of feathers, and he passes through a glowing portal into one final chamber. The walls here display maps of the continents, and in the center is a single enormous button, the last one. This phase is called Future.